All right, welcome back to the Middle Tech Podcast. Thanks for joining us this Monday morning. Evan and I are actually pre-recording this one on Sunday. This is going to be one of the few ones that we don't do live, and that's simply because I am out of the country, and it makes it a little bit difficult to record a live podcast when there's a 6-hour time difference and you're struggling to get the Wi-Fi to work correctly. So, Evan, how are things over in Kentucky?
Good, man. Over here in Awesome Inc., recording out of their amazing sound studio here. But you know, what I'm doing is not as interesting as what you're doing. Tell everybody what you're doing and where you're at.
Yeah, so I'm in Zermatt, Switzerland. This is a bucket list trip for me. I got an invite from a friend to come out here and could not pass it up. So I'm out here on a ski trip. It's been incredible to visit the country and see some of the scenery at the ski resort here. But one of the cool kind of middle tech related things that I've noticed about Switzerland, or at least Zermatt anyway, the city that I'm in, is that the city is only accessible by train, and that allows the city to really control how the infrastructure and how the transportation works within the city. So everything is electric based. There are no cars allowed in the city. So there's only like these little electric taxis and electric buses. And then there's tons and tons of bikes and electric bikes. So it just makes for a really cool feel to the city because you're either walking everywhere and there's tons of people on the street, or you're seeing people ride bikes everywhere, or you're taking these little buses. I think it's just a cool model for a city. So that's kind of one of the things that I'm taking away from being able to visit here. But it's been an awesome trip. I am excited to get back to the States here soon, though.
Yeah, I wish I knew how to ski so I could have gone on that trip with you.
Yeah, we're going to have to teach you. It's funny. One last note about it. I invited a few of my friends to join it because the group that I came with only knew one guy that was part of the group. And one of my friends that ended up joining had never skied before and came out to Switzerland for his first ski trip. So it was really trial by fire for him, but he's managed to pick it up and do a couple of runs with us. So anyway, so this is our second kind of episode in this new format. We got some really good feedback from the first episode doing it this way. I think this is something you and I are really excited about. It gives us a little bit more freedom to discuss trends in tech, discuss news stories to highlight entrepreneurs that are building in our area, and also, always try to add a regional perspective to it. So we got some good feedback from that, and we're really excited about that. So this is the continuation of it. We're going to continue to iterate on that and try to find the best way to provide relevant content to you guys that are listening to us. Evan, what did you think of the first one that we did?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. So, when I'm with you there, I think it's an opportunity for us to dive into more relevant stories that are more timely. There's always going to be a place and an important part of our mission that is highlighting, entrepreneurs and startups. But I think what we're doing here appeals to a larger audience and keeps everybody informed, which I think is very important, especially with current events. As fast as technology moves, Kentucky needs to be up with the latest. So for all the students and just general public to listen to us, that's a big part of our mission, is just keeping people up to date with what's happening out there. So this is a great forum to do that in.
Yeah, absolutely. And, one of the things I just mentioned there is we got a lot of feedback on that first episode, and that's really what we want more of. So as we continue to try out this new format, please continue to reach out to us and let us know what you liked, and more importantly, what you did not like. That helps us refine what we're doing and continue to provide value just to the community as a whole, which is, the whole reason we do this podcast. And then last little point here before we go over our sponsors for this episode is just a point about where Middle Tech as a company is putting some focus in 2023. And that is really investing in events. So we're going to have several events coming up over the next few months. Not only for Middle Tech, we're also doing it for Develop Lex. So if real estate is more of your thing, be sure to kind of follow along with what's going on at Develop Lex, because we're also doing some events on that end of things. So just wanted to call that out. I think that's something really exciting for us because that allows us to connect with the community and deepen those relationships that we're trying to build within the startup and entrepreneur ecosystem. We've kind of always said with Middle Tech that digital media and creating content for social media and podcasts like this is a great way to introduce people to the ecosystem. But, events, especially like what Awesome Inc. does, which is also a great partner of ours because, you're recording in their studio. They do a great job with doing in-person events. We kind of want to take a step in that direction as well and add some variety of events to the startup community. So we're excited to continue to explore that as well. All right. So before we dive into these stories, we just want to highlight our sponsors real quick. So the sponsors for this episode are going to be Bolt Marketing. So that is our friend Chase Fairchild's marketing company. They are the ones that developed our website. So if you've not checked out middletech.com, highly recommend doing so because they built an awesome website to house all of our content and just be a place where people can come and learn a little bit more about Middletech. So big shout out to Bolt Marketing. And then, of course, KY Innovation. So the Cabinet of Economic Development for Kentucky, their startup and entrepreneur focused hub that they have. KY Innovation is also a sponsor of ours. They do incredible things for the startup ecosystem in Kentucky, one of which is going to be the first story that we discussed today. So they help entrepreneurs building in Kentucky that are doing research-based startups and launching companies based off of that research to get funding through the SBIR grant program. So Evan, give us a little bit of an overview of what the news around this latest round of SBIR grant funding is. And let's talk a little bit about the dynamics of getting funding to those companies who are doing some cutting edge research.
Yeah. So just this past week, Governor Andy Beshear announced that 8 Kentucky companies that are working in very innovative technologies will be receiving about $900,000 of state funding that matches grants from the SBIR program. So SBIR stands for Small Business Innovation Research. And then as part of that, there's also Small Business Technology Transfer. So these are matching funds programs. So this is really important. The funds are in part that match the $3.15 million that's going to be given to these companies via federal grants as well. So as I said, the state's coming in and matching some of these funds from the federal government to support these highly innovative companies here in the state. And the companies range from health tech, ag tech, biotech, and then carbon capture technology. So pretty wide range of technologies here and companies building. So it's amazing to see, as we said, the state support these companies with grants. So it's non-dilutive funding, which is another important aspect of this. As a founder, you're building very high risk technologies. And, if you can ever get any kind of funding that's non-dilutive where somebody's not taking a percentage of your ownership early, then that's important because you have to be incentivized throughout the entire lifetime of the company to continue building. So anything non-dilutive is important here. So what stood out to you as part of this slogan?
Yeah, I think, one, it's cool to be able to highlight the direct work that, one of our sponsors is actually doing. One of the things that I've always been really proud about with Middletech and the way we managed to monetize as a company is that all of the companies that sponsor us are also very aligned on the mission that we have to support the startup ecosystem here, especially in Kentucky. So one, it's cool to see and be able to highlight some of that work directly. One of the things that I've kind of noticed around all of this though, is as we kind of see the companies that are receiving this funding on building more research-based companies, is I think I'm noticing a little bit of a gap in terms of the companies that Middletech highlights. I would love to really see us dive into some of these more research-based companies. Whenever we think of, or at least when we started, when we thought of the companies that we wanted to highlight, Middletech itself, we tend to highlight software companies and tech companies. Like Evan just mentioned, this is kind of a different beast in terms of the type of company that's being built there. A lot of them are commercializing university research or building things that are very like hard tech, new and innovative research and figuring out ways to commercialize that. So I think one of the takeaways for me from this story is like, there are some really cool research-based companies being built in Kentucky. And I think that's an opportunity for Middletech to come in and highlight some of those companies being built. So as you can see on the screen that Evan's sharing there, you can see some of the names of the companies there. We'll link to this article so you can dive in and read a little bit more about them. But Evan, I know that Tom Martin also sent a little quote here as well. Do you want to read over that and also talk just about why Tom is commenting on this in the first place, his perspective?
Yeah, for sure. So Tom Martin, he's the dean of the business school at EKU. He's had experience working with, the government very closely and has various roles here in the state, especially with innovation. So he says SBIR is something taxpayers should be very proud of. It's America's early stage fund, scaling high risk technologies in early stages that private enterprise is hesitant to invest in because the risks are high and the returns are unknown. This de-risking actually accelerates private sector investment. SBIR is a great example of a collaborative capacity of the government and private sector. So there's 11 government agencies that partner with SBIR, including the Department of Defense, NSF, and NASA. So really what he's saying here is, I love what he said about this is America's early stage fund. These grants are going into some very important research and technology that, as he said, are very high risk, that the private market is likely not to fund because the upsides are just unknown. It's very research based. And so I think he really sums it up well and says these types of grants and funding are essential to get new technology off the ground. And that oftentimes what we're finding, with our interviews with people like Ian McClure, in the state that are commercializing technology out of our universities, you often realize that there is so much capital and infrastructure behind a lot of this research. And this is why it has to happen inside of universities, because the universities are able to front that cost of labs, resources, materials, and do it in the name of research and education. And hopefully out of that comes technologies like this that then the government can subsidize and give these funds to, but then eventually people like Ian McClure then work to commercialize them and take them out of the university so that the general public and private markets can take advantage of it. So it's really like Tom said, this is a collaborative effort. And I think this is a really great program that we should be proud of.
Yeah, that private public partnership, I think, is just an important aspect of this, and something that is it's good to see when it's working correctly. I know that we can kind of be tough when we talk about government programs sometimes, whether it's on our Friday update that we talked about in the past or on our podcast. But this is a case of it really being done in the right way. So it's fun to be able to highlight that sort of stuff. All right, let's move on to this next story. So airlines have been having some technology problems recently, and we wanted to highlight some of those stories and just talk about the overall theme around the infrastructure that's underpinning some of these systems. Some of the problems that have popped up almost actually prevented me from even getting to Switzerland in the first place. The FAA system, I'm not sure the exact name of the system, Evan, if you can fill me in on that one, but it actually grounded all flights in the US for a couple of hours on the day that I was actually flying out. It caused a bunch of delays and cancellations. And I think just for reference there, the only other time that's happened in the past 20 years was 9/11, when all flights had to be grounded for a period of time. So there's a couple different stories that we wanted to discuss within this kind of overarching theme. So Evan, kick us off by just talking a little bit about the Southwest story and some of these other topics that we wanted to dive into here.
Yeah. So I think the theme here is, America is starting to see, how essential air travel is just for our infrastructure. I think during COVID, there was a lot of rumors that, not rumors, but there's just a lot of speculation around, will there be as much travel? Will people want to travel around, or will they want to use Zoom when it comes to business meetings and things of that nature? But we're starting to find out that, airlines are essential. And a lot of the technology that is behind the airlines and a lot of the processes needs to be revamped. And so just within the last month, we've had two major events related to our airlines that have caused an uproar related to our infrastructure. And one of them is Southwest Airlines, and we'll cover that first. And the other one is what you were just alluding to, which is the FAA issues related to their notice to air mission system, is what that technology you were trying to refer to there is called. But let's start with Southwest Airlines. So Southwest Airlines, I don't know if you remember the big winter storm that came through around Christmas time, the days leading up to Christmas. That storm swept across America, and Southwest Airlines' computer system just couldn't handle what was going on with the storm and freezing, delays, having to reroute planes, reroute crews, and they ended up canceling or delaying about 2/3 of their flights during that period of time, which affected about 2 million customers right before Christmas. So that's the last time of the year. That's the last thing anybody wants when it comes to Christmas is, delays or cancellations with your flight. So you ended up having a lot of people sleep in the airports. So that's kind of the first story here to cover. We'll get into what actually happened behind the scenes, but what was your perspective on what you were seeing, or what at least you heard?
Yeah, well, first off, pull up the graphic that kind of shows how many cancellations were actually going on in that period, because you can see on the graphic that Evan's about to share. At first, it was a lot of cancellations happening because of the winter storm, and then that winter storm kind of made a perfect storm, so to say, no pun intended, for Southwest Airlines for this technology to kind of spin into chaos. Which the actual software that went down was the software that they used to book flight attendants and pilots on the flights. So what was happening is they were not able to logistically coordinate the staff that they needed to have on these planes to get people where they needed to go. And I think one of my perspectives on this, at least after hearing a little bit about the software that they use to run this system, is just you get the curtain pulled back a little bit on the quality of this software. I don't want to speculate too much, but from a story that I heard, a lot of this software was being facilitated through like a phone system of calling and notifying these crew members when they needed to fly, which just sounds archaic compared to a lot of the current technology here. So I think that's one of my takeaways, at least from the Southwest story here, is that, the quality of technology that was underpinning all of their systems and all of their logistical processes was simply overwhelmed by this kind of, freak weather thing that happened during Christmas, and it just caused this spiral effect that sent everything into a bit of chaos.
Yeah. So the software you're referring to is called SkySolver. It's also known as Crew Optimization, and it's built by GE. So I actually didn't know GE made a lot of software, especially software that is basically the backbone of our flight infrastructure. And so Southwest Airlines is claiming that it's not their technology. They definitely probably have to claim this, because if they said that their underlying technology was flawed, that would be a big issue for the business, and shareholders would probably freak out if they found out that they're running their business on, faulty software. But there are stories out there that, like you said, allude to the fact that this technology they're using is very old. So as you can see here in this headline, they're just chalking it up to they couldn't keep up with the volume, the snowball effect of the cancellations. So we'll see. They claim they spend about $1 billion a year on technology. And there's a lot of lawsuits and probes from the government trying to figure out exactly what happened here. So we'll see. This graphic here shows, like I said, there were a lot of flights affected. 2/3 of all of the Southwest airline flights were affected. And that's a big deal. So we'll see how they bounce back, if they do. So the other part of the story that we wanted to highlight related to the airline industry was what happened with the FAA. So the FAA, as you said, grounded a lot of flights just the other day. First time they've grounded that many flights since 2019. They had an issue with their what's called Notice to Air Missions system, which sends pilots vital information that they need to fly. So before a pilot gets into the air, they get all this information related to things like other flights in the air, other, let's say, airway cancellations. So what runways might be closed that are needing to be updated so that the flight crew knows exactly what they need to do in emergency situations. So this is all really important data that the airline pilots need before they take off. That system went down. And so that caused, again, huge delays and cancellations. There are about 10,000 delays and cancellations just related to this issue of needing to ground all flights. And so it was actually caused, back to the technology, by a corrupted file that corrupted both the primary systems and the back office or the backup systems. So very, not a great reason here to have the entire thing come down just based on one file. A lot of people were speculating that it might have been a cyber attack, but it wasn't. There is no evidence at this time. The government's claiming of a cyber attack. So that's important thing to notice and point out, because this is a prime cyber attack situation here. If a government wanted to take down, our transportation via the air, that would be a great way to attack a nation. So yeah, that was what that Delta Airlines CEO was saying. So he's probably the most famous CEO in the airline space. So I'll pull up that article and share that. But what he was saying was this is essentially not necessarily the FAA's fault. This is basically a funding issue. And so what's going on here that he claims is the FAA is not funded enough. So he's basically claiming, you can see here, lack of funding. So he is the CEO of Delta, which is by far the most successful airline. And he points out that in this video here, again, we'll link to these articles, but there's just not enough funding to cover airlines. And so one of the points we want to make related to airlines is they don't make a lot of money. Their margins are very, very slim. They oftentimes have years where they lose a massive amount of money. And so they need to be subsidized. And it's not just the airlines, it's the whole organization, all the organizations around them, like the FAA, that really regulate it and control and keep people safe. And so what he's saying here is that it's been underfunded and we need to put more funding into it to invest in technology so it doesn't happen again. So, overall theme here with both Southwest and the FAA is, technology that's underpinning the airline industry needs to be updated and needs more funding.
Yeah, I think my last point to make with that is, at least whenever I hear that infrastructure needs to be updated, I tend to always think of like the physical infrastructure. And I think an important piece of this to understand is that really a lot of the infrastructure that is being spoken of here is the digital infrastructure. It's not always the actual airplanes and physical systems that exist to make all of this run. A lot of it is the software systems that make the whole system work. So just when thinking about where does this money go, how does the infrastructure actually improve, a lot of it is on the digital side of things.
The software involved in this is 30 years old. So it hasn't been updated or replaced in 30 years, and it's actually not set to be replaced till 2030. So classic government move here to say that software has a date on it, right? So it's like, we're not going to replace the software till 2030. That's not going to happen. They're going to have to replace it before then. So classic sign right there that, the government is just out of touch when it comes to software, especially in this situation. And if they think they can put like time intervals on, when software can be replaced and when it should be paid attention to, they're, mistakenly making a big mistake there. So that is the result of bad investment and poor software planning. But yeah, let's jump to this next story. We've got Tesla price cuts. So out of the blue the other day, Tesla announced that they were reducing some of their car prices by as much as 20%. It's a pretty crazy number. They're claiming that this is a result of one, preparing for a recession, and they need to get through their inventory and increase demand. Because, with the recession, people have less spending power. And so they want to get prices down for more people to be able to afford their vehicles. They're also claiming that they have lower costs to manufacturing their vehicles because supply chains have come down and they're finally reaching major economies of scale. So what that means is they've now got their supply chain and their materials needed to create these cars in a place where they can actually increase manufacturing capacity while decreasing prices. So they've brought more of their manufacturing and supply chain in-house. So as they make more cars, that becomes more and more efficient. So that's what they claim. There's also two other sides to the story. There are the bulls who are, optimistic about the company that are kind of outside of Tesla. These are the institutional investors in the public market. Bulls saying they're lowering prices to increase demand and continue to dominate market share. So I'm going to share my screen here and show you how much market share they actually have these days. It's pretty amazing. So you can see in these charts how much of electric car sales are owned by Tesla. So here's all of the electric car sales in the world here, but these are particularly in the United States. You can see Tesla Model Y and Tesla Model 3 are, controlling the market here in the US. So these are all, again, these are worldwide electric car manufacturers. So these are all the ones throughout the world, but these are particularly sales in the US. So that's one chart. And then here's another way to view that data. So you can see again, Tesla is just far and away owning the market. So the whole market in the US, they own about 64% of the market share of electric car sales. But in the last year, that's come down from 75%. So they are losing their domination by a little bit. That's just because all the other car companies are beginning to come to market with their electric vehicles. But I think what's going on here that I pointed out a second ago, that Tesla says they're doing is they're lowering their prices so more people can afford it. And as I said, the bulls are excited about this because it's going to keep Tesla remaining in this position of market dominance. The last perspective I'll share before I let you give your points, Logan, real quick here, is the bears. So those that are not optimistic about Tesla's future are saying that Tesla is experiencing lower demand. And this is out of necessity to sustain that demand during a recession. And they believe that this is a sign of a struggling company that has deteriorating margins. So they're looking at it from a different perspective, thinking that their margins are struggling. So I don't know what your take is. I know you've wanted a Tesla for a while. I'm a big Tesla fan, but what do you think is going on here?
Yeah, I think it's interesting that this now allows these Teslas to be eligible for the credit on electric vehicles that are priced under $55,000. I think it'll be an interesting dynamic to see that play in alongside, dropping the price in general as we head into recession. In my opinion, that seems like it would drive demand for Teslas and for electric vehicle adoption, kind of at the same time as America's really making an effort to build out the charging infrastructure that I feel like a lot of Americans are really waiting to see how that gets built out before they switch over to an electric vehicle. I know that's pretty much the primary reason that, I don't want to have a Tesla at the moment, is just because if I go on a road trip somewhere, I don't want to have to be altering my route to be able to have to go and charge. So as soon as you get all three of those kind of aligning all at once, I feel like that's something that can really drive adoption even as we head into a recession. So that's kind of the three things that I see kind of aligning all at once that makes this an interesting story, is, that the tax credit that's now going to be eligible for Teslas, the reduced price on top of that, and then also the infrastructure being built out that I think is going to have a really positive impact on driving electric vehicle adoption altogether throughout America. So that's kind of my take on it. I think you did a great job just summarizing the bull and bear perspective on this. I think for me, I'm always going to try to see the optimistic side of these sorts of things, especially since I like Tesla and I like Elon Musk. But I don't know if you have any final thoughts on that. Those are kind of the points that I took away from that story.
Yeah. I mean, my final thoughts here is I don't think Elon Musk is bluffing when it comes to their economies of scale. I think they're focused on the manufacturing side of things just as much, if not more, than their cars. He likes to say that they're building the machine that builds the machine, which is alluding to their manufacturing and their automation and kind of the fact that they're building everything in-house in these gigafactories. I don't think he's bluffing when it comes to the economies of scale. I mean, companies like Toyota and many others, praise themselves for their economies of scale and the way they operate their manufacturing. Tesla is by far and away the most technologically advanced manufacturing in the world. And I think that he's saying, hey, this is just now starting to come online from our worldwide gigafactory network, and we're seeing massive efficiencies. So I don't think he's bluffing. I think the thing we all have to pay attention to related to Tesla and their financials is their margins. Are their margins and this price drop going to correlate with each other? So are their margins increasing because of these economies of scale? And does that increase match what they can afford to drop prices in order to bolster demand? So if we see their margins fall pretty drastically, that's not a great sign. And that's probably a sign that Elon Musk was bluffing when it comes to his manufacturing capabilities. If the margins stay strong while they lower prices, then this is all part of the plan. And again, Elon is showing that he's great at many things. Manufacturing is one of the hardest things to be great at, given how big of a scale it is. And if he pulls it off with Tesla here, that's going to be pretty impressive. So that's what I'm going to watch is, are their margins going to stay strong?
Yeah, I think that's something we should definitely keep the listeners updated on as well. So we'll make a note to revisit this story as we see the effects of these changes take place. So those are all the stories we have for you today. Thank you guys for tuning in. We will be back to doing this live. We'll always do our best to do it live as long as schedules permit and everything. So we had a little bit of a unique situation with me being out of the country here for this recording. But thank you guys for tuning in. Please give us your thoughts on these stories by either reaching out to us on social, commenting under the posts that we make about these stories, and definitely dive in yourself and read the articles that we share in the show notes. So hope everyone has a great week, and we'll talk to you next week.